Welcome to DET tutorial. In this video, we'll be looking at organisms at the cell level of organization of life. And under this, we'll be looking at the structure and function of 4 basic organisms, which are the cell level of organization of life. And they are amoeba, Euglena, Chlamydomonas, and Paramecium. In the previous video, we've already talked of amoeba. In this video, our focus will be on Euglena. And the species of Euglena we're looking at is Euglena viridis. So, Euglena is a protist. It is a protist because it belongs to the phylum Prototista. And all the organisms in Prototista, majority of the organisms are the algae. So, Euglena is a protist. It is called a protist because it belongs to the phylum Prototista, and most of the organisms in the Prototista, they are the algae. So Euglena is a protist and it's also an algae. Another thing that you should know about Euglena is that Euglena is a dual organism. And why is it called a dual organism? It is called a dual organism because it has both plant and animal features. So because it has plant features, that is why botanists classify Euglena as a plant. And because it has animal features, that is why zoologists classify it as an animal. So this is high yield and it's very important. You can be asked in an exam that why is Euglena referred to as a dual organism? So Euglena is referred to as a dual organism because it has both plant and animal characteristics or features. Another important thing that you should know about Euglena is that Euglena is microscopic. And what does that mean? It means that Euglena cannot be seen with the naked eyes. So you would require the aid of a microscope in order to see Euglena. So it is a microscopic organism. Another feature of the Euglena is that Euglena is a unicellular organism. It is a unicellular organism. That means that Euglena is made up of one cell. And remember, we are looking at organisms at the cell level of organization of life. So that tells you that Euglena is made up of one cell. It is a unicellular organism. And also Euglena is aquatic. That means it can only be found in water. It can only be found in the aquatic environment. So these are the few things that you should know about Euglena. Euglena is a dual organism, and the reason it is called a dual organism is because it has both plant and animal features or characteristics. Euglena is microscopic. That tells you that Euglena cannot be seen with the naked eyes except with the aid of a microscope. Euglena is unicellular. That tells you that Euglena is made up of one cell, and Euglena is aquatic. That means it can only be found in the water environment. So having known all this, let's look at the structure of Euglena. So this is a simple structure of Euglena. Euglena has a flagella that it uses for movement. It has a mouth, and this is the mouth here. This opening here is the mouth, and it uses this mouth in feeding. It has a contractile vacuole, which is this radiating structure that looks like sunlight, and this contractile vacuole is used for osmoregulation, that is regulation of the salt and water content of the organism. Then it also has another structure called the paramylon granule. These paramylon granule, they are the blue structures, the blue granules that are found distributed around the endoplasm of the Euglena. And these blue substances, which are called paramylon granule, they are used for the storage of starch. Then you have the nucleus. The nucleus is this red structure here, and it is where hereditary materials are housed. Then you have the ectoplasm. The ectoplasm is the layer of fluid between the inner membrane and the outer membrane. And this fluid layer which is called the ectoplasm. It kind of helps in maintaining the integrity of the cell. Then we have the pellicle, which is the outer membrane of Euglena, and the pellicle is very flexible, and it is what is responsible for the flexibility of Euglena. Then we have the endoplasm, which is the layer of fluid within the inner membrane. Then we have the chloroplast. The chloroplast is these leaf-like structures that is found in the center of the organism, and the chloroplast is where the chlorophyll are found, which are responsible for photosynthesis. Then we have the eye spots that are sensitive to light. Then the gullet. The gullet is the tube where the food that is taken via the mouth enters into the cell, enters into the endoplasm. So this is just a brief illustration of the structure and the function of Euglena. So like we said before, Euglena is a protist because it belongs to the phylum Protostista, and it is called an algae. Also, we said that Euglena is a dual organism, and the reason it is called a dual organism is because it has both plant and animal features. Because it has plant features, that is why botanists classify it as a plant, and because it possesses some animal characteristics, that is why zoologists classify Euglena as an animal. So let's look at some of the features that makes Euglena an animal. So what are the animal features of Euglena? Why do zoologists classify this organism as an animal? So one of the reasons why they classify it as an animal is because of the presence of flagella, and this flagella is used for locomotion. It is this whip-like structure that is well labeled here. It is used for locomotion, it is used for movement, and it is only animals that can move from one place to another. So because of the fact that Euglena can move from one place to another with the help of this flagella, that is why zoologists classify it as an animal. So you can be asked in an exam that why is Euglena considered an animal? One of the features that makes it an animal is because of the presence of flagella. Then the second reason why it is classified as an animal is the presence of gullet, and this is the gullet. Remember, I told you that the gullet is the tube that connects the mouth to the endoplasm. Food that is taken in via the mouth is in this location, the mouth is here. So the food that is taken into the mouth will then enter into the gullet, then from the gullet into the body of the Euglena. So the gullet is acting as a tube for the passage of food from the mouth to the body of the organism. So it is only animals that possess the structure of gullet. So the presence of gullet is what makes zoologists call it an animal. Then the third feature that makes Euglena an animal is the presence of the contractile vacuole. The contractile vacuole is this structure here that looks like a radiating sun. So the contractile vacuole, the main function is for osmoregulation. So what is osmoregulation? Osmoregulation is a regulation or maintenance of the concentration of salt and water within an organism. So, and the structure that is responsible for this in the body of Euglena is the contractile vacuole, and this is the contractile vacuole. So it is very important. You can be asked in an exam that which of the following structure is used for osmoregulation in the body of Euglena. You should know that your answer is the contractile vacuole. So the contractile vacuole is basically used for osmoregulation, for the regulation of salt and water in an organism. So the next feature that makes Euglena an animal is the presence of the pellicle. The pellicle is the outer membrane. It is the outer membrane of Euglena, and this pellicle is very flexible. and that is why Euglena is flexible. So the pellicle is responsible for the flexibility of Euglena, and it is only animals that are flexible. Plants are always rigid because of the presence of cell wall. So you can be asked in an exam that what makes Euglena flexible? Euglena is flexible because of the presence of pellicle, which is the outer membrane of the organism. Then the other feature that makes Euglena an animal is the presence of the eye spot, and this is the eye spot, this yellow structure here. And the main function of the eye spot is that it responds to light. So whenever there is sunlight, the eye spot will respond to it. So these are the features that makes Euglena an animal. So you can be asked in an exam that why is Euglena called an animal? So Euglena is called an animal because of the presence of flagella, because of the presence of gullet, because of the presence of contractile vacuole, because of the presence of pellicle, and because of the presence of the eye spots. And you should know the function of all these various structures. So having known this, let's look at the plant features of Euglena. What are the things that makes it a plant? In other words, what are the structures that made botanists to classify Euglena as a plant? So one of the reasons why Euglena is referred to as a plant is because of the presence of chloroplast. And the chloroplast is these green leafy-like structures that you find in the center of the Euglena. And these structures, like I said, they are called the chloroplast. They contain the green pigment called chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is responsible for photosynthesis. So Euglena is referred to as a plant because of the presence of chloroplast that contains chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is one of the major requirements for photosynthesis. Then another structure that makes Euglena a plant is the presence of the paramylon granule. So the paramylon granules, they are these these blue granules that are found distributed around the endoplasm, and these paramylon granules, they are used for the storage of starch, and it is only plants that can store starch. Animals, they store carbohydrates as glycogen, while plants will store it as starch. So storage of carbohydrates as starch is a typical characteristic of a plant. So it is only plants that can store starch. Animals, they store carbohydrates as glycogens. So these are the two basic reasons why Euglena is referred to as a plant. One of the reasons is because it has chloroplast, and the chloroplast contains the chlorophyll that is used for photosynthesis. It is only plants that can carry out the process of photosynthesis. So in summary, we have looked at Euglena viridis, and like I've said, Euglena has both plant and animal features, and that is why Euglena is called a dual organism. So it is called a dual organism because of the presence of animal features and plant features. And the animal features that makes Euglena an animal are the presence of the flagella that is used for movement, the presence of gullet that is used for feeding, the presence of contractile vacuole for osmoregulation, pellicle for flexibility, and eye spots for light response. So these are the 5 basic structures that makes Euglena an animal. Then the plant features that makes it a plant are the presence of chloroplast that contains the chlorophyll that is used for photosynthesis, and the paramylon granule that is used for the storage of starch. So these are the structures that makes it both plant and animal.